in the dim, candle-lit corners of the Canadian Maritimes, where the sea's relentless whispers mingle with the superstitions of old. Tales of devilish bargains have taken root in the very fabric of the land. For centuries, the rugged fishermen, desperate settlers, and weary sailors who called these harsh coasts home were known to turn to darker forces when all else failed. They spoke of midnight encounters on desolate beaches where the devil would emerge from the shadows, cloaked in fog, offering power, wealth, or a way out of despair for a price. These stories, passed down through generations, tell of lives transformed by a single fateful choice, only to be damned by the consequences that followed. In the maritime provinces, where the winds howl with the cries of the lost and the sea churns with untold secrets, the legacy of these devilish pacts endures, a chilling reminder that the greatest temptations often come at the gravest cost. This is the story of Devil's Island.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Deceptive Reality Podcast. My name is Nick, who has now gone 0 days without remembering the podcast title. And with me, as always, is the murderous but witty Bert.
Yes, sir. Listen, there's some murdering going on in this house. Unlike last week, for anyone that doesn't know, if you're listening versus watching, at the beginning when Nick and I, we talk a little bit for like 10, 15, 20 minutes before we actually start this bad boy. And while we're sitting here, I got a very aggressive fly that's coming in. Now, as many of you know, there was a podcast that came out like, I don't know how long ago, because at this point, all these episodes are all discombobulated, but there's a fly that went landed right on my mic.
Oh,
but this one's laying on my forehead.
Yeah, this one was aggressive. I could see it attacking you. It was like smashing its body against your face, like repeatedly.
It was savagely attacking me. I'm like, man, now that really tells me, honestly, two things, Nick. The first one is with the amount of lights, this glistening in my skin, I must be really bright. That's number one. Number two is it's trying to come after me after we killed its friend Derek. Or third option, it's sent by demonic forces, Lord Beelzebub, King of the Flies, or was it Lord of the Flies, sending its minions to stop you from outing them. It very well could be. That's true.
That one might be a conspiracy theory.
Listen, it's only a conspiracy theory until you prove it right, Nick.
That's right. Well, we've got two flies of evidence, two bodies of evidence, one might say.
That is true. I feel like there was something that came out in the paranormal world this week that, did we talk about this last week? About the shrouded Turin?
I think we've talked about it off air.
I can't remember. We talk about stuff off air too, folks. If you heard this twice, I apologize. They did the testing again, and they believe that the Shroud of Turin is from that time frame.
Okay. All right.
Which is highly interesting. That's a callback to an episode we did a while back on the Shroud of Turin. Is super interesting podcast. Now, you'll only probably be able to find the first one because the second one, YouTube found out we said the J word too many times on there. It was like, nope.
Jerusalem?
Yeah, something like that. A man from Jerusalem. That's how we'll put it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Good old James.
Yeah. That
James
was his
from
brother,
Jerusalem.
for sure.
Well, we won't go into any more detail on that. I want people to hear this episode.
Yep, for sure. But they determined that it was from the time frame. And on top of that, the guy that did it was a skeptic of the Shroud of Turin.
Okay.
And he was doing it to prove that, again, what they originally did back in the, 80s, 70s, 80s, whenever it was, he was like, I'm going to prove that this time frame is correct. And when he did it and he got done, he was like, yeah, I've got no logic for this. So he is now a believer. He says that he does not necessarily believe and everything attached to Christianity. But he believes that that was definitely, probably the shroud that was used to cover the person that we cannot say on this podcast.
Lord Voldemort.
Yeah.
He who shall not be named.
Yeah. This episode will go so far down the YouTube rabbit hole, you'll never find it.
Well, how this guy feels about it is pretty much how I feel about it. Like, I think it's like legit as far as it goes, although maybe I'm not super into all the things it might mean.
Yeah.
But I thought there was sufficient evidence before that it probably was from that time frame.
Well, what he's saying is because of the metal box that it was in, that's what's causing the time frame to be off, is what he believes.
Okay.
So that's his hypothesis.
Yeah.
Because what he's saying is apparently it causes I don't even know how to say it. It's like a atomization of the oxide, like the metal oxide, where it's inside the box from the heat and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And it puts almost like a particulate on top of the shroud. But once they's able to get past that with the testing, they determine, this is like from 1 AD.
Well, that's pretty darn close for me.
That's pretty darn close.
Pretty darn close.
You're not getting much closer.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no. He's
Is that
back.
a different one? Did he survive that?
He's back from the grave.
There's no way. Is that a zombie fly?
He is risen.
Wow. We're talking about someone who rises and this thing comes back for us. It wasn't even 3 days later.
Yeah, you should have put a shroud on him.
No doubt. 15 minutes later. Good night. Crazy. So yeah, the shroud, that was pretty crazy that that was a thing. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. At a minimum, it's interesting. It might be something we might want to revisit in the future. I think we need to do that with a lot of these episodes, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Imagine that, like, even back then, that was a pretty big event. And there were guys selling, like, souvenir shrouds at, like, the stadiums and stuff during sporting events. Get your shrouded in here. So we've got, like, literally thousands of these, and they all date to the perfect time frame. That would be wild. That could be a thing. It's unlikely, but if that happened today, that would definitely be a thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But
Big time.
I don't think they thought of that back then.
Well, here's the thing. What I think we should do is revisit like the top 5 episodes for like one episode at the end of the year or the beginning of next year.
Right.
Revisit the top 5 from the previous year.
Oh, that'd be an interesting idea.
Now, if we did that, I think we'd have to take out our specials because that's an unfair.
Yeah, that's not
unfair
fair.
number. If we did that, Shrouded Turn would be number 1, episode 1, followed by, this one blows my mind, The Black-Eyed Children. Now you're probably like, why does that one blow your mind? That video was dead.
Right.
Dead on arrival for like 4 months. There was nothing.
It goes in phases, man. I'm telling you.
It did. It went beep beep and it just kept moving on.
Yeah, but that, like, the legend of the Black-Eyed Kids has that pattern too. It'll lose interest, and then there'll be a whole swath of sightings, and then it'll stop, and then a whole swath again. It's wild.
Well, it straight up went from like 20 views to the number it's at now, which is just over 400 just on YouTube. It's almost at 500 views.
Nice.
But Black-Eyed Kids, followed by the Infield Poltergeist.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Followed by Circleville Letters.
Yeah, another really good one. Complicated one.
And then the Bell Witch. That'd be our top 5 if it stopped today.
That'd be fun.
Not including specials.
Right.
So yeah, Shroud, Black-Eyed Kids, Infield, Circleville Letters, and the Bell Witch.
That'd be fun to revisit. That's a good New Year's thing.
Yeah, I think for New Year's, that's what we do. We pick like the top 5 maybe. And we just talk about, did we learn anything recently that has maybe added or deducted from it?
Did our opinions change or?
Yeah.
That'd be
even
cool.
things like that. Because I know after we do these episodes, both of us, we do research on stuff after the fact, just because curiosity's sake.
Heck yeah. Afterwards, I'm like, oh man, I better check my episode again because let's see what, is there things people are going to come after me about? Like I remembered it wrong, or I'm not so worried about the narratives, but the things I say in between, sometimes I might get messed up. So
it's surprising, man. People get all butthurt about some of these, like the Mandela effect one.
Right.
Good night. We had some dude going off, literally off in our comments at us.
Yeah.
And I'm like it's not that serious.
Yeah, like really relax, man.
Like there was literally 2 people in the last week, separate people.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not going to make any friends. I guarantee they're not watching anyway. But this person was like, then show the article then. I looked it up and it still says it's false. I'm like, okay, bro.
What do you want us to do?
Okay. And then this other one, I'm sure they probably don't sound like this, but when I read your comments and they're hateful, this is how I read it. At 30 seconds, it's false. It's a well-known fake in the ME community. First off, if you proclaim that you're part of the ME community, maybe go outside, touch some grass with your bare feet, do something. Okay. I've never once been like, I'm part of an ME community.
Yeah. I mean, good for you and joining clubs and stuff, but we got to do a different topic every week. We can't join every one of these obscure communities. I mean, all respect to the community, but we can't join these communities and spend like 5 years in them. No. So,
and the best part is like, if you join a community, and this is, trust me, this is from trial and error. If you join a community and they find out you have a podcast, they're like, you're using my community for your podcast. Yeah. It's like, I haven't even mentioned my podcast. Yeah. What are you talking about? But we know why you're here. So it's like, you can't even really join.
Yeah. Like, so it's a really lose-lose either way.
It's a lose-lose. If it's on Reddit, these mods, I legit got a message. I'm not going to say the name of the community, but y'all are a bunch of buttholes. Didn't even say anything inside the community. Didn't say a word inside the community.
Right.
Didn't ask any questions. Didn't comment on any comments. Didn't comment on any posts. I was just, someone would put a post up. I'd look at it. I'd be like, well, that's interesting. It's more for me. Like, it's not even something we would typically cover on our podcast. And they sent me a message. And I didn't even notice it. My thing didn't even come up that I was blocked. But he sent me a message and they're like, we don't allow people. I can't remember how they phrased it. Something along the lines of, we don't allow people to advertise their whatever. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, did I accidentally post one of our things to their thing? So I started looking and I'm like, nope, they're all in the same spot. So I sent a message back. I'm like, I guess I'm confused. Like, I've not even commented. And they're like, but we see you're a podcaster. I'm like,
well, that's not enough to.
Could you imagine? Like, you have a community on Reddit about, let's say, on Stingray Corvettes.
Right.
And then they look up and they're like, you drive a Nissan, get out.
Yeah, really? Like, that's a little unfair.
It's like, what kind of craziness is this? So it's like, you can't really, unless you have like some alias as a name, like it's crazy that you have to go through that process. So all you people that talks about communities and stuff, listen. Go outside, touch some grass with your bare feet. Okay. It'll all be okay. Promise. Keep all hands and limbs inside the car at all times. Okay.
Speaking of this topic, I'm not very active on social media. But I found out that I am banned from a TikTok a Twitter or X person. And not just on Twitter, but also on all their social medias. And that is
like
PETA.
A famous person?
PETA.
You're on PETA's list?
I'm on PETA's list. Now, I didn't know how like militant they were, so I always considered myself someone who might support PETA. Yeah. But I think it was man, it's been years. I didn't know I was even blocked by him, but a few years back, they said that they were glad that Steve Irwin died. And I love Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
I went off on him. I was like, imagine his family reads this. He did more for animals than you'd ever. Like, I just went off on him. I had to use 2 of my 148 character slots, and they must have a thin skin because they blocked me on Twitter. They looked up what my name might be on Instagram and all this other, because it's not the same on each of them, as you know.
Yeah, it's not.
They somehow looked me up and blocked me on everything, and I saw that fly.
That was crazy.
PETA
dude.
would defend that fly.
Literally right beside my face. PETA, if you're watching, don't block me. Okay.
Yeah, you know what? PETA's not watching because I'm involved. They have
true.
such thin skin, and I love animals. Like, I never want to harm them, like much less than I'd want to harm a person. But
that blows my mind.
Steve Irwin in particular, like, he reminds me a little bit of my dad, how he's like, you know, knows everything about animals, and he's like, respects them. He doesn't ever fear an animal. He just respects them. And like, he's the kind that would, like, well, he's never had a chance to be around a crocodile or anything, but if he was and he had a reason to, he'd definitely wrestle a crocodile. So when they said that, I just went off on them. And apparently for all these years, I think this must be like 7 years now or something, I've been blocked on all their social media. Yep. See, I can't get there.
Look at that. Your boy is still a PETA friend. PETA
Not
still
me.
see me and they're like, man, we like Bert.
Yeah. I must have really hit a nerve with them for them to go to all that effort. That's someone spending time to research me to block me on all these social media.
I don't know anyone that would say Steve Irwin was bad.
Except PETA.
He was a animal activist.
Right. Well, they said that he teased animals and, you know, was causing them undue stress and stuff like that. He was always trying to help them.
Always.
Like, and
he
no
had
matter
conservations.
Right. And like, he wasn't some criminal. Like, even for criminals, you don't go around publicly saying, I'm glad this person's dead. No. Like, what harm did his family ever do? Like, he had a young daughter and son, a grieving wife, all that kind of stuff. You can't do that.
Because we live in a society that has no feelings for the average person. If you're against whatever their cause is, you're automatically the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, I don't feel that way about things.
I don't feel that way either.
Good.
You know, there's nothing that I've ever been so against that I'm like, I hate anything that this person stands for, or, you know, I've never had that my entire life. And I don't understand people that do.
No, for a lot of people, it's my way or the highway, I guess.
Yeah. Like it also reminds me, like, people that will go out of their way to create other accounts to message people. Like, that blows my mind. Why?
Yeah. Sock puppet accounts.
Yeah. I mean, I have a relative that I haven't talked to in forever. And they will create a new Facebook post or a new Facebook account like once a year, if not more, just to say something derogatory to me. And I never respond.
Wow.
I've never responded.
That's nasty.
It's crazy to me, because here's the thing. I sit there and I kind of laugh every time I get something, because I'm like, I'm living in your head rent free. And the only time that I remember you is when you message me, and then I block you, and then 10 minutes later, I forget about you again.
Yep. Yeah.
You're wasting your time. Like, you're not getting underneath my skin. I don't care about what you have to say.
You know, we've talked about a lot of people behaving badly. You know what the cause of that is? The root cause?
I heard of a saying a long time ago, and I always say it, is hurt people hurt people.
In some cases, that's true, but in these cases, it's the devil. And that's how I'm bringing it back to the topic we're actually going to talk about.
Ooh. The devil made him do it.
Yeah, we must have not chatted a lot this week because we just went on a real long tangent.
We didn't talk a whole lot this week, Nick. We was busy.
Yeah, I know, but I'm reining us back in. I'm reeling us back in. Yeah. And I've mentioned this on a few other episodes, and as soon as you start hearing about it, you'll remember that this is something pretty common that happens in the Maritimes, in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, Newfoundland. But I'm not going to get too much into that. Tonight's episode, I'm just going to tell you a Nova Scotia yarn, as we call them, or folklore, just as I would have heard it, or just as a lot of people would have heard it. And it has to do with a little fella by the name of El Diablo.
El Diablo.
Yeah.
Here's what's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I might have figured out how you got on that block list for PETA, because I don't know how PETA's going to fit into this whole entire thing.
The devil makes them behave as they are.
I guess so. Well, we're going to listen to this first part, Nick, see what's going on?
Yeah, let's listen to the first part.
El Diablo.
Off the rugged coast of Nova Scotia lies Devil's Island, a forsaken speck of land that seems to float in a shroud of mist and legend. The island, isolated and weather-beaten, juts out of the frigid Atlantic like a dark sentinel. Its jagged cliffs, battered by relentless waves, hold the echoes of long-forgotten tales. The skeletal remains of a lighthouse stand as a lone guardian, casting an eerie silhouette against the stormy sky. Whispers of shipwrecks and lost souls haunt the wind, carrying with them the scent of salt and the chill of despair. Here, time itself feels as if it has been swallowed by the sea, leaving only the ghostly remnants of a past steeped in mystery and melancholy. Once a thriving fishing community, Devil's Island has been abandoned for decades, its shores now silent save for the cry of gulls and the crash of waves. The old crumbling structures overtaken by nature are a stark reminder of the lives once lived here, now consumed by the island's unyielding solitude. Legends speak of restless spirits wandering the fog-bound coast, their mournful wails blending with the howling wind. The island's name, a curse or a warning, adds to its sinister allure, drawing only the brave or the foolish to its shores. Devil's Island stands as a place where the line between the living and the dead blurs, and where the sea forever whispers its dark secrets.
Oh, we loved it at first, we really did. Devil's Island was our little piece of the world, you know. It was rough, sure, but it was home. We had school dances in the old community hall, right there by the lighthouse, and everyone would come. Neighbours, friends all together, laughing and dancing under the stars. You could hear the music across the water, mingling with the waves. We were close, so close, like a big family, all of us looking out for one another. But things started to change after a while. There were stories, whispers about the island, about how it got its name. You see, folks said it wasn't just a name that the devil, that he owned the island. People, good people, started making deals, desperate ones. It was so gradual we didn't see it at first, but then things got darker, much darker. Those who made deals, they got what they wanted, but they paid for it. Oh, they paid.
Tonight, we'll take a journey back in time and find out what became of this once bustling island community.
So it's the Devil's Island.
First off,
your
narration was farce.
Farce?
Yes.
How so, sir?
Because first off, there ain't no woman that'd be like, I was just shocked that it made me wonder why this was called Devil's Island. It was called Devil's Island, okay? There's nothing no good that comes out of an island that's called Devil's Island. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. That's how I know that was a farce right off the get-go. Ain't no one was that dumb, Nick.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I want you to remember this moment in time for when we listen to this next segment, okay? Because it's going to be real funny that you said that when this next segment comes up, and I'm real glad you talked about that.
It's literally Devil's Island.
Right. Remember that.
It'd
It's
be like
important.
if I went to a restaurant and it said butthole on fire sandwich. I wouldn't be like, wonder what this tastes like. I wonder if this, it's probably not that hot. Probably not that hot.
Oh, that sounds like a good time.
Next day you're like, oh my God, oh no. You know. Like,
you gotta have these experiences, Bert. You gotta have those experiences.
Like there's a reason that they named things what they named them. Devil's Island's not going to be no one walked around. It's like, man, this is a beautiful island. I bet we should call it Devil's Island. Like that would never happen. Never happen.
It does though, but there's a specific reason that I can't tell you yet.
It happened because the devil's there. You don't go there, Nick.
But I can't give it. I want to tell you so bad right now.
She was like, we used to do our school dances. And I was like, no, you didn't. The devil was there. This ain't Georgia either. The devil went down to Georgia looking for soul to steal. They went to Devil's Island. That's where he went.
Well, he owns that island. He owns Devil's Island.
He probably just went to Georgia for his timeshare.
Yeah, he just has like a summer home down there, or I guess a winter home maybe.
He's like, you know what? We need a warmer spot. This gets too cold up here in Canada land. My island gets a little too cool.
Oh, it will. I mean, it will get cold there. But yeah, what inspired me about this is like many times I've told like just offhand how, you know, in the Maritimes, like it's pretty common to hear stories of people making deals with the devil at certain locations and stuff like that, like on the old train tracks.
Yeah.
Which happened in our very first story,
Robert
if you
Johnson.
recall. Yeah, Robert Johnson. That's where he did it. But we have other locations like certain rocks that he appears on. That's like rocks that have hoof prints melted into them, and you'll know that's where you can go to make a deal.
Yeah.
Or like on lonely beaches or that kind of thing.
That's what I'm saying. This woman's a farce. Think about all
You'll
the
see.
places that we talk about the devil, and we go,
Right.
this is probably not a good place unless you're into devil stuff.
Yeah.
She was like-
It's real interesting.
We used to make pies in the summertime, and you see all the birds there chirping, and everything's real good. And Snow White's from here originally. I don't know why it's called Devil's Island. It's such a nice place. No, it's not. Stop lying to the people, lady.
Well, you'll see why in the next segment.
Reminds me of Mr. Winters from an episode I did for the last 3 weeks of
Right.
my podcast. He was renting out his house.
Mhm.
And first off, Stephen LaChance, I still want to do an interview with you on my channel, but in the freaking, when they're walking around the house, Mr. Winters, the landlord, turns around to him and says, "Do you believe in ghosts?" Right there's your indicator. You don't listen, tour is done. Why would you ask me that question? Just randomly? Why would you ask me that question?
Yeah. Well, it's like you see that house on like Instagram where it's like house for sale and it's got a not haunted sign on the top. Like, because you said that, obviously we now think it's
100%
haunted.
haunted. There's
Right?
105% chance. Okay,
Yeah.
we're 5% over the maximum. It's overflowing with ghosts.
Right. Right. So that was the first reason that inspired me to do this. But also when I was on my trip to Toronto a couple months back, I had a night where I had to wait to go pick someone up. So I switched on the TV in the hotel, and I had traveled from Nova Scotia to Toronto. And of course, it was a channel featuring Legends of Nova Scotia with Helen Crichton, who you probably never have heard of, but she's a famous folklore historian here. That is pretty much everyone's first introduction to Nova Scotia folklore. Like, she wrote the definitive guide, which is called Blue Nose Ghosts.
Oh.
And they were featuring her. And this is one of the places that she went and she talked to people about. And the old lady voice that I'm doing is kind of modeled off of her. She was an interesting person. She'd have them crate her typewriter and recording equipment in wheelbarrows onto this island when she'd go visit the last few people that were on there. Mm-hmm. And she'd type and they'd talk and she'd record it. And some of these recordings still exist. Really hard to get their hands on. But I'm sort of emulating that with the old lady's voice here.
Well, it might be inspired by, but that little old lady you're talking about knows that island is no good.
Oh, she knows now.
She knows. She knew then, Nick. She's
I
this is
don't
called
think so.
Devil's Island. There's nothing good about this.
Yeah, I can't hold it back any longer. Let's play the second one so you'll see why it's so funny that you're saying that.
When people first began to seriously settle Devil's Island, the reason it had gotten that name was already lost to the sands of time. The accepted explanation when they arrived comes from the anglicized spelling of Deval, or Deval, or Deville, the family name of an early French settler that might have been on the island, so the new residents didn't really think much of it. The island was granted to Captain John Rouse in July 1752, and then became known as Rouse's Island. It was first settled in 1830, and by 1900, there were approximately 20 families that call the island their home. People would later say it was this renaming or claiming of the Devil's Island that assured there would be no peace here. The devil is proud. Throughout the 70 years, strange occurrences almost became a way of life for the families on the island. Since there wasn't a lighthouse on the island until 1852, shipwrecks happened with abnormal frequency on the island. The families would often be awoken by the smell of smoke and see huge fires on the other side of the island where the ships had run aground. Yet, when they arrived to help, the dry, grassy hills were not burnt at all. They would only find the remains of the ship and the ones who were aboard it.
Oh, the shipwrecks. They used to happen so often. Always in the dead of night when the fog was thick and the sea was wild. You'd be asleep and then suddenly you'd see a glow through your window. At first we thought it was lightning or some strange reflection from the lighthouse once it was built. But it was different, like a fire burning out there on the grassy dunes. We'd rush out, all of us, half-dressed and shivering, hoping, praying that we could save someone, just one soul from the cold grip of the sea. But the fires, they never left a trace. No ashes, no charred grass, nothing. And people started to talk, to whisper that it wasn't just fire. They said it was the devil himself, arriving to claim the souls that had been lost, those poor doomed souls that washed ashore. We were terrified, all of us, but what choice did we have? We couldn't just stay in our beds, not when there might be someone out there clinging to life. So we went, every time, even though our hearts were pounding with fear, and we knew deep down that we were walking straight into the devil's shadow.
The beginning of that was doo-doo.
So let me lay it out for you so you can see how funny this is.
Did you hear that?
What?
That fly landed right on that freaking microphone.
He's still on it.
I know.
Oh, this is going to be a disaster.
Oh, man, I left the thing over there.
Yeah, I can see him crawling around there. That's the devil.
I don't know if I got him or not.
We'll see, I guess.
My microphone still works, so that's good.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be an expensive mistake right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let me lay it out for you. So they convinced a bunch of these people to move on to this island, about 20 families. And by this time, it was called Rouse's Island. Now, some of them going on there were like, hey, I heard this used to be called Devil's Island. Oh, no. Don't worry about that. It was owned by a French guy. His last name was Deval or Deville, which Deviller is like a common French name around here. It's just how us English people say Deval or Deville. It's not like devil. It's like Deville Island. So don't worry about that. It's called Rouse's Island right now.
Yeah.
So they got all settled in. And then all this crazy fire stuff started happening. They're like, this is the devil showing up.
Wonder why.
Yeah. Now, it was a little too late at that point, but they're like, I think that guy lied to us. I think this is actually Devil's Island.
Yeah. Confirmed.
So
I said that in the beginning.
Right, exactly. But now you see why they were like, oh, this is probably a good place to lay down our roots.
Yeah. First off, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
First off,
Right.
Old Bert's looking for a spot. And they go, oh, this is Roos. What'd you say, Roos Island?
Yeah, Roos Island.
And I'd be like, oh, I heard it was called Deviled Island, Devil's Island. They're like,
nah.
The guy's last name's Duval. I'd be like, that's not true. You're not full of Bert on this one.
Well,
Okay.
what if you knew a bunch of people whose last name was Duval?
Never believe the lie, Nick.
Yeah,
Never
but
believe
like,
the lie.
that's like, I mean, let's say you knew and you were moving with a bunch of people whose last name was Duval. There's like Fred Duval,
Yeah.
Steve Duval,
Yeah.
and you're going to Duval's Island. Like,
No.
that's normal.
No, it's not. Because it's Devil's Island. Duval,
Right. Well,
Devil, no.
That's
Not
what
the
it
same.
turned out to be. But that's not what they were sold. They're like, it's Duval's Island. You guys know Duval's. You know
I wouldn't have
DeVille's.
fallen for it. Ain't no way.
Well, they
Zero
were
chance.
simple folks. Simple
Well,
folks from another time.
Old Bert, not falling
Mhm.
for it. Just putting it out there. So if you got an island you're trying to send old Bert to, don't let it be called Devil's Island and try to give me some lame excuse.
Nah, man. It's
why it's
Duval's
called.
Island. You're not going to
Is
go
it
to
still-
Duval's Island?
Is it still called Devil's Island?
No. Yes, it is now.
The rest my case.
Right.
folks.
Right. It is now.
I'm never going there.
You would
just
never go?
FYI.
You won't go
No.
to Devil's Island?
In the great place where the devil's at? Hell no.
What? You can't be
Hell
afraid
no.
of him.
Listen, I'm not afraid of him. I don't really want to be in the same room with him, Nick.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I don't want to be in the same room with people I don't like.
Yeah, see?
So, yeah, I get that. But
Yeah.
again, these people were not privy to this information. They were
They're
sort
just
of
common folk.
They were just common folk. And I mean, they like a lot of them were probably like God-fearing folk, but
Well, apparently not. They went to Devil's Island. If you're
well-
God-fearing, I'm pretty sure you're not falling for that mess.
well, I don't know. You remember how we talked about before, like once upon a time, if someone called you on the phone, you just assume they were telling the truth. And now you just always assume they're lying.
Yeah.
Well, back then, if someone told you something in good faith, probably you were like, yeah, okay, I believe that. I know a
Until the
lot of
devil's
Duvals. They might have not even known it was called that before,
involved. Okay.
depending on where they're from.
Listen, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it happened anyway, and they were kind of stuck there. They had built their whole lives around it, and it was pretty fine, except that there were like a lot of shipwrecks there. And they'd always know about them in advance because they'd see a great big fire on the other end of the island. And then when they show up, nothing's burnt. So that's a little sketchy.
Funny how that works on Duval Island.
Yeah. So that might have been their first hint that maybe it was Devil's Island. Because in that narrative, they were saying like, well, we're starting to whisper now that, maybe this is Devil's Island. Like,
Yeah, huh.
maybe
Shocker.
we were misled here a little bit.
Didn't see that coming.
So something that's not in any of the narratives, well, actually it kind of is later on, is all these shipwrecks and stuff, there's never a survivor. They never successfully rescued everyone, although they went out and tried to all the time. And to this day, it seems that anyone who perished on the island gets to stay on the island forever. So
What a
people
great
see,
story this is.
yeah, it's I guess that's one good reason you won't want to go there. Do you remember the first season of American Horror Story? Did you ever watch that?
No.
Well, what it was is this house, and if you died on its property, you became a ghost there forever.
Wait a second. Was that the show that had the 1984 or whatever? Is that what it was?
It had a season that was like in the 80s, and it was like at a summer camp.
I think Jess watched that entire thing.
Okay. There's quite a few seasons. I gave up after a while, but
I think she started watching it. There's a whole bunch of people that was dying, right?
yeah.
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 She
In
definitely
the
watched
first season, it was called Murder House.
Yeah, I feel like, was there a scene where someone got the old knife in a mall?
Oh, Life in the Mall. that could be on a lot of seasons, so I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jess watched it, but I don't think we've watched it recently. She's probably watched it without me because I'm like,
yeah.
If there's like
This was years
violence,
ago, right?
If it's like a huge amount of violence, I'm like,
yeah.
If there's like no reason for it, like
right,
like the Scream movies and stuff like that, like I can watch them, but like they're not. Like that's more of a if nothing else is on, I'll watch it kind of thing.
Right.
I prefer my horror movies to be psychological.
Yeah. There's some of that in the earlier seasons, in the first one, I'd say. And it ties into different historical events. You might have heard of, what's his name? He ran that hotel where there was like all kinds of crazy shoots and slides, and he would kill people in the hotel. H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, H.H. Holmes, yeah.
Yeah, they had a season with that, which starred Lady Gaga, by the way. Which was weird. But anyway, the first season was called Murder House, and if you died on the property for any reason, you became a ghost stuck there forever. And that's kind of the thing that seems to go on with this island.
Interesting.
But yeah. So basically, even if most of your life is idyllic on this island, like most of the time everyone was having a good time. They were a close-knit community. But, you know, every month or every couple of months, there'd be a horrible shipwreck. There'd be some ghostly fires. Everyone had to go out in the dark to help. And they were always felt like they were just walking right up to the devil every time that they did it. And at this point, they're kind of like, yeah, we don't think this was Deval's Island. We think this is Devil's Island.
Wow.
But most of the time, it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But
totally fine.
So you're a holy man of sorts. Do you think that the devil has places that he prefers, or is it just?
It's called Earth.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, the whole thing, Nick.
Yeah. Do you think he makes any special appearances some places more than others, or?
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%.
What's your theories to why? Like, why are certain places better?
I think it's more of that's where he gets called. I don't necessarily know he just pops up there. I just feel like that's where he's summoned.
That kind of makes sense. Like, it's so weird because we've got like a lot of religious folks. I'd say more than our fair share around here. But the Maritimes have this old tradition of people asking the devil for stuff like it's no big deal.
Yep.
Like, and I haven't been able to pinpoint why that is. Because, a lot of places, if there's people who believe in the devil, they never would make a deal with him.
Oh, yeah, there's no way.
Like,
technically, witchcraft falls in the same category.
Yeah. As like dealing with the devil, or?
Yeah, because you're summoning on his demons.
Oh, I suppose. I wouldn't imagine witchcraft back in those times was very common. Like, not mainstream. Yeah, I suppose not. Like, there's a lot of like, sort of like healing rituals that people do around here. Like, they think if you do something at a certain time, it will help you heal and stuff. And that's all kind of witchcraft. And like folk magic and that kind of stuff.
It makes sense. It's like anything else, Nick. There's always theories about what can cause this and what can cause that. And, a lot of it's just great folklore. Yeah. But what I do notice is when there's a high abundance of occult things, that's generally where those folk stories end up.
Right.
Quinkadink? Maybe.
Well, it's interesting that we got to this topic because the other book that Helen Crichton got famous for is called Blue Nose Magic, where she went around and collected different witchy things that people did and, to try and make things happen. And I think she said like a lot of that comes from people in harsh conditions trying to find ways to control nature and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So that would probably lead into your theory quite a bit.
Wow. Man, it's a miracle that I've somehow figured this hypothesis out. Man, it's like, it's not like I've never thought of this whole thing before, Nick. Wow.
Oh, almost. It's also interesting, the name of some of our islands here. You know, in the Oak Island episode, we've got Murder Island, Skull Island, Devil's Island, Devil Island. Like, I don't think we trust islands here very much.
I just think y'all a bunch of evil people, Nick. Y'all try to be nice with your, I'm sorry, I apologize. But then down deep inside, that's where the devil's at. I knew it this whole time.
There's no lack of evil people here. Trust me on that. There's no lack of that whatsoever. I'm actually from an island, so maybe that's why.
Could be.
I'm so devious.
Could be. That's what I'm saying. You're like a cat, Nick.
Yeah. My one was only called Cape Sable Island, so it's not super evil sounding.
Yeah. That, like, if someone was like, hey, you want to go to Cape Sable Island, I'd be like,
yeah,
I don't hear nothing devilish on that. I'm good. Yeah, let's go.
It had a name before that. I think it doesn't mean anything though. It's a Demon Island, but the guy who owned it, his name was Damon.
Not going no more.
Just kidding with that.
Man.
Yeah, well, man, I guess I given away a lot about where I grew up at, but that was the largest summer Micmac settlement in the world, I guess, at one time. That's island.
Crazy. That's nuts.
But anyway, there's a lot of devilly stuff going on this island.
Y'all got a lot of witchcraft stuff going on, Nick.
Probably a lot of witchcraft stuff is what brought it on. In fact, we don't know back before this guy was deeded the island what was going on there.
That explains it, Nick. I've just now figured all this out.
It's witchy stuff.
Ah, Nick. Because you got tattoos like that too.
Oh, I do.
This is a trap.
Mm-hmm.
The old devil's been setting a trap for me this whole time.
I've done 70 or 80 episodes trying to lure you to the dark side.
That's what it is. They're trying to get me to Canada land.
Can you do a special effect in this point that I laugh and I'll go like, ha, 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 and then you have me disappear in a puff of smoke?
That'd be dope. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. If that doesn't happen, just imagine that happen.
Just imagine that happen.
Yeah, listen, how cool that would be.
For those of you guys are on the precipice. If you are not, I'm using really big words this episode. I'm sorry. You guys are on the plateau, so to speak, of the old Deceptive Reality podcast. At this point in time, by the time this comes out, we're already integrating some AI videos into the mix.
Yeah, so that could happen.
Which could happen. I'm kind of excited by all this, to be honest. So
there's one already that makes me laugh every time I see it.
People think that was just real.
Yeah, that looked pretty close to me.
It's relatively close. And I had to put the American flag in the background. I had to add Americana music to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want people to think I'm doing that in Canada because I'd get arrested. But in the States, all bets are off. Yeah, exactly. You can do what you want. It's all about personal freedom.
Exactly. Land of the free, baby.
That's right. So now that we've talked about the witchcraft part of it a little bit, are you interested to hear a little more of what these people had to put up with?
You're right. I'm trying to figure out where I need to stay away from when I come to Canadaland. Got it.
All right. Let's do it.
Not everyone was afraid of the devil, nor even believed in him. Some fishermen, then as it is today, were made of a very practical nature. One of these men was named Caspar Henneberry. On those nights when the families shivered in the cold and in fear trying desperately to save people from the shipwrecks, Caspar was fearless. He'd assure everyone the devil had no hand in this, but if they feared the devil, they best spit in his eye and do God's work and try to help save lives. Caspar both defied and denied the devil every chance he got. That's why it was a great and fearful shock to everyone when he came back pale and shaking from one of his fishing trips.
Oh, I remember that day like it was yesterday. Casper was always one for stories, but that one, well, it was different. He came back from fishing one evening, pale as a ghost, and said he'd seen something strange out on the water. Told us that a halibut, of all things, had popped its head out and spoke to him clear as day. It told him it was the devil, and that Casper would be dead by the next day. We all laughed it off, thought maybe he'd been out in the sun too long or that he was pulling our leg. But the next morning, they found him in his boat on shore, just as he said. He was slumped over the side, head and shoulders hanging out. But the strangest thing was, he was bone dry, not a drop of water on him, yet they said he drowned. And that wasn't all. There were signs of a struggle on the beach where they'd found him, like he'd fought something, someone. But the prints in the sand, they weren't right. Looked like cloven hooves, that's what they said. And then, as if that wasn't enough, when his family moved into his house, their baby died just a day or two later, with no cause anyone could see. We were all terrified, didn't know what to make of it. But deep down, we knew the island had claimed them, one way or another.
So, this part I love because for anyone who doesn't know, a halibut is a fish. So this guy was out fishing in his boat, nice fine day. He looks over the side, and I can't wait till you see the picture in the video for this. It did it perfectly. In the picture, he's got a halibut in one hand that he's bringing over the side, and another one's popping its head out, but it's got jagged teeth on it. And it's like, I'm a halibut, but I'm also the devil, and you're gonna die.
Man.
I find that hilarious. Like, if you were making up a story, I can't imagine adding that in there.
What a visual.
Yeah. Wait till you see the picture. You'll love it. It's probably my favorite one that I've ever done.
First off, when this narration started and it said you're going to die.
Yeah.
First thing I was like, he did. Like, listen.
Yeah. You said that before that even.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I was like, he dead. He dead as can be. He dead as a doornail. He dead.
Yeah. He didn't show the proper fear and respect. You're in another fella's house. You gotta behave.
That's right. You gotta be good.
Yeah, you gotta be good. So he was like convincing people, this devil ain't got nothing to do with this, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. He was the bravest one when they headed out at night to the shipwrecks. And for him to come back and he's like, man, I saw a halibut stick its head out of the water last night and he told me it was the devil and I'm going to die tomorrow. And for him to like look scared, people were like, well, he likes to tell a good story now and then, a good yarn, like we say here, but he looks awful shaken. And then fine day the next day, sunny, everything. He goes out. They find his boat on shore. He's still in the boat, just his arms and his head hanging over the side. He's drowned somehow. His body's completely dry, but he's drowned. And they see that he struggled with a cloven-hoofed beast on the shore.
Wouldn't it be something if he's just getting out of the boat and a freaking cow headbutted him and he died?
Headbutted him just into the water and he sucked a bunch of water in.
Yeah.
And then he finally got up and he fell into the boat. And that's how they found him.
They say you can drown in a tablespoon of water.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes when I drink things, it goes down the wrong tube and I feel like I'm drowning. Yeah. Yeah. But they took it to mean, since the fish threatened him the day before, that the devil had come down and lay a beating upon him.
I mean,
killed him.
That's what I think happened, but wouldn't it be something if it was a horse or not a horse, a cow? Cow took him out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they had cows on this island. That's a fact.
See there?
So, or maybe like someone just did this to him and then a cow just came down to see what was up. Because cows do that. They're curious sometimes.
They're curious. Like, what's going on with this guy?
Yeah, like there was a struggle, but then a cow come and put its footprints all over everything.
Exactly.
And they see, it would be so lucky for the murderer because they wouldn't even investigate it because of the fish story from the previous day.
Exactly.
So if he come back and told the fish story, and someone said, "Oh, I've wanted to kill this guy for a good long time. I got an idea. I'm gonna beat the crap out of him down on the beach, kill him, throw him in the boat, and then I'm gonna take my cow Bessie down there and walk her all around." And they're gonna blame that on the devil. That's the perfect crime. That's the perfect crime.
Man,
stranger things have happened in real life, but
that is true.
For the purpose of this story, the devil did it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes for a better story.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of fits with all the other stuff going on.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So,
but no, I saw his death coming from a mile away, literally a mile away, just like Duval Island. Saw that a mile away too.
Duval Island. So, in regular tradition, does the devil ever come put a beating on people, like physically, or is it just like all magical stuff? Does he ever appear as other creatures?
Oh yeah, I mean, he's Baphomet. The devil's Baphomet.
Right. So he can be all kinds of different things.
I mean, Baphomet, he's a hooved man.
Yeah. But can he like turn into other animals and stuff?
I don't specifically remember any stories where he did.
Oh.
I mean, people proclaim that he's the serpent from Adam and Eve, but that's not.
I've heard that's not true.
That's not true. Yeah. That's not.
Yeah, that was its own thing.
Yeah. They basically didn't look at the transcribe very well, is how I'll put that.
Right. Yeah.
The translation.
So that was just like a creature that wasn't very nice to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there any further stories about that creature, or was that it?
I mean, they made reference to it elsewhere, but that's the only time that I believe the story was told. I believe in the New Testament they referred to the serpent. But yeah, I think that's the only two places that I know of in the.
Was he in cahoots with the devil, or he was just doing his own thing?
So the theory is that it's all one and the same within reason.
Right.
So part of the theory is that there was these Nephilim that was on Earth, and that was some type of a derivative of a angelic creature. But they were all associated, right? It'd be like if there was a biker gang and one guy did something horrible, you would just say the bikers did it. It's kind of the same concept.
And he was a snake.
And he was a snake. That's right.
I remember, and this isn't like biblical, but you know how there's all kinds of stories. You know the story of Jack-o'-lantern, like where they got the Jack-o'-lantern from.
Yep.
And how he kept doing tricks on the devil to get away from him. And he was like, yeah, I'll go freely with you to hell, but you need to buy me a drink first. And the devil's like, well, I don't have money. And he's like, well, I've heard you can shapeshift into anything. Can you turn into a coin and I'll buy a beer with you? And he's like, wow, that seems legit. So he turns into a coin, and then Jack just puts him in his coin purse and leaves. Leaves him in there. Have you heard that story before?
I think you told me this story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorites. That's so funny.
Yeah, I think you told me. I think this came up last year for a Halloween episode, I think.
I bet it did. Episode. Yeah. I love that story. But yeah, in that kind of like folklore stuff, he can turn into anything at any time. So there probably is some kind of background to this.
Well, I think that folklore comes from, again, when you look at Old Testament stuff and then you try to equivalate that to New Age stuff, it's kind of like there's so many things that get lost in translation. So, there was capabilities that who knows? Yeah. Who knows what truly happened? Like, it's all speculation, all of it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, we're forgetting the biggest thing. Maybe he didn't turn into a halibut. Maybe he possessed a halibut.
I thought you was going to say that we're in a simulation anyway, and it doesn't really matter. But you went a completely
well, that too. Okay. I mean, that's more along my belief system. I'm putting my own beliefs aside to go into this. I like a good devil story. Like of people getting tormented by devils and stuff. Like that's why I love our possession ones so much.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah. But yeah, like I've been thinking about it all wrong. Maybe he didn't turn into a fish. Maybe he just possessed a fish. Like that's definitely something he could do.
It goes back to even like Joe's, the Lindley Street story.
Yes, the cat.
The cat. I mean,
yeah,
the cat just had the capability of doing it, but it was being almost, used like a puppet to a degree.
Yeah. Ever since we talked to Joe about that, anytime I think of a talking cat or a talking animal or something, that I just hear Joe's voice. Because he did it, like, that's canonically in my head how animals talk now.
Right.
Like, I hear his voice every time I think of a talking animal.
For sure.
Yeah.
He had a very interesting way of doing it too. So it's kind of like, it's easy to get stuck in there.
Yeah, he made the animals sound sassy.
He did.
Yeah, he's like, what's the matter? What's the matter?
Good old Joe.
Oh, man, we should have got Joe to do the voice for the halibut.
Oh, yeah. We should have.
But anyway, besides the point, yeah, so this guy was like the unbeliever, and he was sort of keeping them together. He was like, don't give this, like, if you think there's a devil, let's not give him too much respect. Remember who we work for.
Yeah.
In that case. But he got the axe. So that's not good. He was sort of like their last line of defense from fully giving into all this stuff.
What a lot of people doesn't think about is, unless God puts his hand of protection from a biblical standpoint, the devil can do whatever he wants to.
Yeah, and this guy didn't believe in like God either, so he didn't have that
he's screwed.
Protective layer, right?
Yeah, he's screwed.
Yeah, so he got his Job. Yeah.
The only stipulation was don't kill him.
Yeah. That story has got problems in my mind, to be honest. But
it's a deep story.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that because it at surface it really doesn't seem fair, but anyway, this guy had no protection at all.
Most things are not fair, but there's a theory on the Job story. Not to get too far off on a tangent, but there's a theory on the Job story that because at the end of the story, if you remember, he got everything that he had, plus more.
He did, but I don't recall that he got the people back that passed because I don't think that happened.
It didn't say one way or another. What if he did? What if he did? And then on top of that, it was like it never happened for him.
Now that would be fair. That'd be fine. I mean, he'd probably still have PTSD or whatever, but
do you know what that sounds like?
What?
A simulation. When you go back to your previous save point.
Yeah. It's like this thing that I saw on Instagram or something. It's like an NPC being really rude to a player character. And then it appears above the player character's head, saving game. And then the NPC is like, no, please, no. And it's like all kinds of horrible things are going to happen just to see what happens. And then you go back to the save point.
Exactly.
That'd be interesting. This simulation stuff comes up so much.
It does. This is what I'm saying. We look for patterns. That's what. Yeah. This is what people don't understand. There's always a pattern. There's always a pattern. It's a question of how many times do we see the pattern and we go, wait a second, why am I seeing this again? And it's not even that it's the same stories.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter what the story is. There's almost always a correlation with a different story with a pattern from that story. And it doesn't make any sense. UFOs to aliens to demons to cryptids to ghost stories, to demon stories like what we're talking about now. And there's always a correlation.
Well, I mean, the biggest sim out there is like The Sims, like we talked about before.
Yep.
And what's the first thing everyone does when they get in a simulation? Try out the different weird things that could happen.
That's true.
So we get an island that's run by the devil. Well, that's an interesting simulation someone might want to try, or all this kind of stuff.
I saw today, I was watching a video.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy inside, and I forget what the name of the game was. He created a computer that ran completely separate from the game itself inside the game.
In Minecraft, people have done that.
Yeah, but this game, and the computer that was created inside the game, made Pong.
Oh,
so you could play Pong inside of a game that was inside of a game that Pong was not generated within the game itself, but from a separate computer that was created inside of the game. So it used none of the resources. Try to explain that to me.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Which makes no sense. It used none of the resources of the game to play the game Pong inside of a computer that didn't exist.
That's crazy, the things that can happen now.
But we say, how does anyone think that we live in a simulation? But yet, we just created a computer inside of a game that's separate from the resources of the actual game.
Yeah.
That's the Matrix. We created a Matrix inside of a game.
We can definitely do it. And if we can't now, we can definitely do it in 5-10 years.
But if we can do it now, how do we know we're not part of the same thing?
Could be. But
we're just the Sims.
We are the Sims. But for this particular story, it's the devil.
It is the devil.
I'm bringing it back to that. It is the devil.
Listen, we go back to the devil. Simulated devil.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah. So let's see what happens next on this island now that this guy's gotten their last line of defense. He was.
I'm down.
After what happened to poor Casper, it was safe to say there weren't many skeptics left on the island after this. For most of the families, it was impossible to uproot again and leave the island. Casper's house stood empty on the hill, but not silent. On stormy nights, people would often see a large hulking man in oilskins leaving the house and descending the hill. The man, most thought to be the devil himself, would head off in the direction of the next inevitable shipwreck. Shipwrecks that continued long after the lighthouse was built. Now and then, the man would be accompanied by a baby dressed in white. Some claimed it was the child the devil claimed right after killing Casper, doomed to his service. To the villagers' surprise and relief, as long as they all believed the devil was amongst them and feared him, they would not be bothered, and some semblance of life could continue.
This went on for years, you know. As long as people believed in the devil and showed the proper fear, kept their heads down and didn't question too much, they'd be left alone. But the moment someone forgot or started to relax a bit too much, strange things would happen. You'd see wet footprints or hoof prints appear right in front of your eyes on the floorboards. The sound of something being dragged across the floor in the dead of night, or wailing. Oh, the wailing. It would haunt you. And then there was the smell, an awful stench that would seep into your house and linger for weeks, no matter how much you scrubbed or aired it out. It was a reminder, you see, that he was still there, watching, waiting. This went on so long it just became a part of life. By the time I was grown, it was so normal that the children didn't even always know why there were certain rules they had to follow. The adults couldn't rightly talk about it. We couldn't speak the words out loud, not without inviting trouble. But that silence, that's what started it all. The beginning of the end. When we stopped talking about it, when the fear started to fade, that's when things truly began to unravel. We forgot, and he made sure we paid for it.
You know, one of my favorite things in real life ghost stories or paranormal stories is sometimes there's parts that there's just no explanation for. Things that happen and you're just never going to find it why.
Yep.
Like, what's the dragging of something that you hear in other rooms of your house? What's dragging?
Right.
Like, what's the wailing from? Like, what's the smell about? Like, these things, sometimes in like horror movies and scary stories and stuff, there's things they don't explain. And that always creeps me out more.
For sure. Makes perfect sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but It makes
Right.
perfect sense for why we question those things because,
Yeah.
Again, it's patterns. We constantly
Hmm.
see patterns. It's like yesterday I did an interview with Brooke and Lori from the Wildwood Sanitarium. That's one of the spots that Nick and I are looking to go to next year. And during the interview, I would notice Lori would look up and say, "Did you hear that?" And I couldn't hear it just from my monitors. Once I'm doing the audio, I'm going to double check it. But Brooke would go, yeah, I heard that. She goes, something upstairs just moved and it's just them in the house. It's like, where does that come from? If it's just the two of them in the house, but people like to use excuses where it's the house settling. Or,
Right. You hear that a lot.
And if you've been in a house that settles, like you kind of understand that sound. You get accustomed to that sound. So I understand it, but it doesn't always explain all the other things.
Right. I lived in a very old house one time. Like before it was my house, it was a stagecoach stop that had burnt down and they'd rebuilt it.
Oh, wow.
Which made the lawn a devil to mow, by the way, because it had different levels, because that's where the stagecoaches would stop so people could step right out onto a platform.
Yep.
But that house, I was familiar with it, the sounds of a house settling, and you know what it is immediately.
Yeah.
Like you're familiar with the sound. So if you lived in a house like that and you heard that sound, even the first or second time, it wouldn't surprise you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But if you heard a sound that wasn't that, that would be unusual.
It's like as a kid and hearing footsteps on my grandparents' stairway.
Right.
That's not a house settling. You're hearing footsteps.
Yeah. You know what a footstep sounds like. You know what a house settling sounds like.
Exactly.
They're clearly different. But people who don't know these things assume them.
Yeah, because again, they want to put a label on something. They want to say, this definitely is not what you're saying. This is fill in the blank, whatever excuse they can come up with.
Yeah.
And then the burden of proof is always on the person that's making the speculation.
Right. And that's sort of like having things in these stories that don't have any explanation. That really bothers thinking people, because like we've talked about before, our brains also are pattern recognizing engines.
Oh, yeah.
So
for sure.
If we hear a sound that doesn't make any sense, that really puts us off kilter, because it could be anything. It could be nothing. But we don't like that. That doesn't fit into our normal reality. We want to know the explanation behind a sound, the explanation behind an event that happens. Like, think of a crime where someone just snaps one day and then they can't explain it later. Like, that stuff bothers us because it's like we can't find a pattern to this. We can't understand it.
Right.
And that puts me at unease in these stories, because if I was in my old house and I heard something being dragged upstairs, that would really bother me if I went up there and there was nothing up there.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the world of possibilities of what it could be is just so big, and none of them are good.
No, yeah. Sky's the limits, though.
Yeah. Like, if we can't even limit it to a certain number of things, that's really disturbing for humans. Like, that's real problems for us.
Oh, yeah, big time. Well, you got to remember, too, our brains are wired to look for patterns, and they try to say that is a survival thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that it is a survival thing. I just think that, like, one of the things that I'm messing with right now, and some people will probably give credence to this more than others, but I've been playing around with music because I have a music channel also that I play around with, but I've been incorporating music with binary frequencies.
Right. Like binaural beats, they call it a lot of times, right?
Yeah, but that's like specific variances in the frequencies to make a beat.
Yeah.
what I'm looking at is more the frequency. So the binary frequency, because what they say is the frequency, if you pipe in a certain frequency, it can change the brain patterns of what we have already.
Okay.
So there's certain frequencies that science has said, yeah, it is the closest to being what we do. Like one of them's 417. 417 hertz is considered a stress reducing binary frequency.
Do you find that to be true?
I don't know, because I don't know how much is placebo, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like, I know it's there.
You'd have to test it on someone without them knowing.
Right. Correct. But like 417 is a stress reducing, 423 is a focus and almost like an energizing one.
Okay.
417 though will put someone to sleep. Like if they're stressed out, it'll calm them down and potentially put them to sleep.
Oh, well, that sounds all right.
But like the movie industry uses 19 hertz. That's considered the fear, the panic frequency. So, but again, it's a pattern. We've got a certain pattern that's going on in our brainwave, and depending on the pattern of that frequency, it can either, it's like, I watched a video the other day. There's two tuning forks.
Right.
You hit them both at different times, but they're the same frequency range. They basically become one. Doesn't matter where you hit them. They automatically tune themselves into one. But if you got one that's just one octave down, there's a point in time where you don't hear any frequency.
Right.
So it's like, and you're like, how?
I've kind of heard that kind of thing before.
Yeah. And what happens is the two frequencies cancel each other out at a certain point in that frequency. So you don't have that wave. You have a spot where there's like a dead spot. So, our brains are wired that way. So when we see something that's off the kilter, I think that it's our brain going, wait, that doesn't fit. That's not comfortable. It's almost like uncanny valley too. Like we talked about that, like last week. I think it's all the same.
Right.
Uncanny valley, frequencies. There was actually something very interesting that kind of fits, but kind of doesn't, that I just watched this week. But again, it goes back to basically different ranges of things and how we look for patterns. So it's definitely there. As humans, we're going to. Now, why that is, I don't know.
Yeah. But like if we hear something and we absolutely can't place it, that's always scary to us.
Correct. Uncanny valley.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
what is that?
Exactly.
Why is it making that noise?
So I guess if someone were like writing a scary story or writing a scary movie or something, put in some stuff that you just don't explain to people.
Oh, yeah.
Like put in a sound and then never have them find the source of it.
There's a horror movie that someone's creating that did something that I had never seen before. And I'm like, that's genius.
Oh, what's that?
What they're doing is they're doing a story around a mimic. Do you know what that is?
Oh, yeah. Like they pretend to be something else and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, it's not uncommon for the mimic to mimic, like someone's kids or their dad or something like that. But what this is, the mimic's mimicking the person. So they're hearing their own voice crying for help.
Oh, interesting.
But they're hearing their voice. So they go, why am I hearing? Is this me going nuts?
Yeah.
Or is this something that's, and then the worst part is as they get up to investigate what it is, then they hear their dad's voice too. And they go, oh, wait, like there's something to this. So it's kind of an interesting concept. With Halloween coming up, of course, we see more and more of these things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's another thing. Like, I think, well, I'll only speak for myself, but I think a lot of people, when they hear their own voice not coming from themselves, doesn't make them feel great. Like, if you used to record your, like, For example, I don't like to listen back to our podcast. I have to every week, but I don't like hearing myself on the podcast. It puts me at disease. Like a lot of people don't like to hear themselves their recorded voice because you don't expect to you hear your voice coming from yourself, but when it's coming from something else, that's spooky. I think.
Oh, I agree, 100%. Not a fan of it either.
Yeah. So that's another trick people could use. But in a lot of these old stories, there wasn't explanations for things. Like they were dragging something around upstairs. There was wailing. Or that one you could probably put down to like the trap souls on the island and stuff like that.
Sure.
A horrible smell you couldn't place. That would bother me because you don't know what that is. But it's all these kind of things. Is the moment that people stop showing the proper fear and respect, you know, they'd get wet hoof prints on the floor, a cow's really making its rounds, or they'd hear these sounds or something. And as soon as they started to get scared again, it would let them be. But it wanted them all to know whose place this was. Don't get too sassy like old Casper.
Can't. Old Casper became a Casper. This is why you
That's right. That's right. It's an appropriate name.
Exactly.
But
fitting.
The bad part about what's happening here is the lady's explaining it as she got older. A lot of the kids coming up, their parents wouldn't talk about it. So they didn't know there's certain rules they got to follow. They didn't know to take this seriously and stuff like that. So, you know, some kids would just joke about it. You know, they didn't show the proper respect and that kind of thing. And that, like she said, was sort of the beginning of the end of people living on this island.
Yeah, when I heard that section, it took me back to The Village.
I kind of thought about that too.
Yeah, they had their own rules, regulations. Some of them didn't believe in it. So.
Yeah. And it was the kids in that one too that sort of in the end unraveled everything.
Correct.
But are you interested to hear what happens from here?
Absolutely, I do.
Because this is a unique story for us. It has a definite beginning and a definite end. So let's crack on a little bit.
It all became too normal. As dares, some kids would even make harmless little deals with the devil. Like, if I don't get caught for skipping chores, he'll give the devil a coin. There were even some stories that the families who suddenly became prosperous were making more serious deals. The most terrifying deal started one summer's day when the excitement of the upcoming dance was all anyone could talk about. For 16-year-old Clara, however, the thrill was tinged with despair. The village was so small, and the boys her age were few and far between. She longed to experience the magic of the dance, to be swept off her feet like the heroines in the stories she adored. But as the days dwindled and she remained without a date, Clara's hopes dimmed. One evening, in a moment of frustration and heartache, she stood on the wind-swept cliffs overlooking the sea and whispered into the night, "I'd give anything, anything at all, if only I could find a date to the dance." No sooner had the words left her lips than a young man appeared, as if from the very shadows themselves. He was dashing, with dark, piercing eyes and a smile that made Clara's heart skip a beat. He claimed to be from away, a traveler passing through who just happened to hear her wish, and to her astonishment, he asked if she would accompany him to the dance. Clara's parents were immediately wary of the stranger. There was something about him that set their nerves on edge. But Clara, desperate to go, pleaded with them until they relented. With a reluctant nod, they allowed her to attend, though a sense of dread settled in their hearts. The night of the dance was everything Clara had dreamed it would be. The hall was alive with music, laughter, and twinkling lights. The young man was charming, treating her with a care and attention she had never known. For hours they danced, lost in the magic of the night. But as the evening wore on and the tempo quickened with a lively jig, something terrible happened. In the middle of a spin, the young man's shoe flew off, and gasps filled the room. Clara looked down in horror. Where there should have been a foot, there was a cloven hoof. The realization swept through the crowd like wildfire. Her handsome companion was the devil himself. Screams echoed off the walls as the devil let out a menacing laugh and vanished into the night, leaving Clara standing there, trembling with fear. She fled the hall, mounting her horse and racing home as fast as she could. But the terror was far from over.
Clara, she was my daughter, you know. I'll never forget that night. Throughout the dark hours, our home was besieged by the sounds of hooves pounding on the roof, like the devil himself was trying to break in, because he was. And then there were the whispers. Chilling, awful whispers carried on the wind, telling Clara she'd traded her soul, that she had to come away with him. We all heard it, every last one of us. The hours dragged on, filled with nothing but fear and despair, until finally, thank God, the first light of dawn came and broke the devil's grip on the island. But when the sun rose, somehow in the moment we took our eyes off her, Clara was gone. Just gone. We didn't wait. We packed what we could and left Devil's Island that very day. The horror of what had happened too great to bear. We weren't the only ones. Soon others followed, unable to shake the fear that had taken root in their hearts. One by one, the villagers left, until only those who had made their own dark deals with the devil remained. Devil's Island, once a place of simple lives and a close-knit community, became a desolate reminder of the price that could be paid for even the smallest of wishes. And Clara, my sweet Clara, she never came back.
And that's how the island became unpopulated, except for one or two.
Yeah, that's poor old Clara. She had a rough go of that.
Yeah, well, she said she'd give anything for a dance. I mean, I would have wished for a little more than that, but
I mean, here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
My brain's a weird spot. I sit there and I think to myself, she's at this dance, that shoe flies off, and everyone's like, "Oh, Clara dating a goat boy."
It's the goat boy. It's
she
weird because his feet were goats and his head was a halibut.
Exactly, a halibut goat boy.
Halibut goat boy. That's a new cryptid that we've discovered right now. Halibut
right.
Goat boy devil.
We're gonna have to go to Mid-Journey and figure that one out.
That's right. But yeah, so this is like another thing that I find scary in stories is you remember the Hopkinsville goblins.
Yeah.
Why I found that so scary because they laid siege to a house all night. Well, the devil was tapping around on their roof, trying their doors, trying their windows, and whispering, "Clara, you made a deal. You've got to come away with me." Like that's scary.
That's creepy.
That is creepy.
It's
And
kind of like, you know, when you think about stories, that's like the worst is when they're almost like antagonizing you.
right. And clearly, the worst part of that is he could have taken her at any time. Because he did the moment their eyes were off her. She was gone. He could have took her all night, but he wanted to, scare them all evening by like rattling windows and stomping around on the roof and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Like,
that's rough.
That's real jerk behavior, if you ask me.
I mean,
But
it's the devil.
I'll tell you, if something were to happen to me and I become a ghost, I'd be like spooking the heck out of people. I'd be rattling chains and stomping around, and like it's just fun and games for them.
Oh yeah, I mean they've got nothing to lose from it all.
Yeah. But there was I think you know how they say like a lot of stories start off as cautionary tales.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
these stories they would tell the kids and stuff to prevent them from doing a certain behavior that was dangerous.
Yep.
So this one reminds me a lot of like a cautionary tale where it's saying like, be happy with what you get and never say, "Oh, I would give anything for this," or "I'd give anything for that," because someone might come and take advantage of you. Maybe it's not the devil, maybe it's just some kind of grifter or something like that. But this has got like a lot of feelings of cautionary tale to it.
For sure. In which when we talk about the devil or demons or whatever it is, there's almost always an entry point. No matter what the story is, there's something that causes them to open some would say door, a spiritual door to allow whatever it is in. I don't know. It's all fascinating.
And it makes sense, because if you're a contented person, what would be their in with you? Like if you were a happy, contented person, they'd have nothing to offer you.
Right.
Like you never hear like the story. You never hear like the possession stories where they're like, oh, this person was happy. They had an awesome life. They had no weird trauma or mental problems. And then they got possessed.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It was always like, there's something wrong with this person's life. And then they got possessed. Correct.
Yeah. There's always a case where that is what occurs.
Yeah. So if you were part of a people who were, thought that it was real everyday stuff that the devil could take you, if you weren't happy with what you got, that would be a real good cautionary tale to tell your kids, like, hey, don't wish for stuff. Be happy with what you got, because you'll end up like Clara,
Facts.
Right?
That's facts.
So cautionary tale, maybe something that really happened. The island definitely was abandoned. Now there's probably tons of natural reasons for that, but it happened pretty quick. They said that the people who had made, like, because the narration said there were some families that there was rumors that to get prosperous, they had made serious deals with the devil, and they couldn't leave when the time come. Because if you die on the island, or if you make a deal with the devil, you're there for life, or not for life, for afterlife.
Well, yeah, it's an afterlife thing on that one. You're listening.
Yeah.
You done scheduled your appointment.
That's right.
And that's
sometimes the cost is too high.
Oh yeah, big time. Way too high on that.
Oh,
Out of curiosity, what does everyone say at home? Y'all think this halibut demon goat man got these people on that island?
Right.
Did y'all believe that it was the island of Duval Duval? Do you believe it was Duval Island? Would you have fallen for it? You've been like old Bert here and been like, that's a doggone devil island. You ain't fooling me. Not fooling me.
This would have been a short story if you were in it.
It would have been a real short story. They'd have been like, why is Bert going back across the water? You don't want nothing to do with that island. I don't know. They said Duval, and he was like, nope, I'm gone. I'm out.
No, should have told me that before we got on the boats.
Exactly. I could have saved y'all at least 20 minutes. At least. Once I make my mind up, there ain't no going back.
That's right. You would have been safe. That's a good thing.
I'm stubborn. I'm like that. What is it they say? You can walk a cow up the stairs, but not down.
Oh, yeah.
That's me. I'm stubborn.
I think
like
that's just safety for the cow. So
exactly. Yep. I'm like, nope. You're not getting me on that island. Not today.
Nope.
Well, hopefully y'all enjoyed this podcast. And if you didn't, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, that's right.
Those of you that liked it, if you've been around this long, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell button, leave a comment, tell your mom, tell your uncle's lost nephew.
Tell your halibut.
Yeah, tell your halibut. And listen, come back next week for another halibut story.
Oh. That's a good sign-off point.
Exactly. Well, until we see you on the next podcast, goodbye.
Halibut good times.
Whispers in the night, shadows twist. Prison cells corrosion, shades don't resist. Madness creeps in, hollow has no end. Outcast cursed souls, no chance to mend. Like sure spirits rise from the deep. Restless echoes haunt, never sleep. Stone walls crumble, time to stand still. Gods of agony fed by nature's will. Devil's island cries, lost souls decay. Ghostly rails, their voices fade away. Awakened shore spirits rise from the deep. Restless echoes haunt, never sleep. Stone walls crumble, time stands still. Gods of agony fed by nature's will. Devil's Island cries, lost souls decay. Ghostly wails, their voices fade away. Summer breeds in shadows, nowhere to hide. On this forsaken isle, madness is our guide. Shattered minds find no peace in this hell. Desolation's course where the lost dwell. Waves crash hard, a symphony of pain. No redemption here, just the devil's reign. Haunting winds carry tales of the damned. Forgotten faces mark the devil's hand. Fears take root in the soil of despair. Under the blood moon, forgetting air. Daylight fades, darkness grips tight. Hope and illusion vanishing from sight. Prisoners call out through the island bars. Under a sky darkened by fallen stars. Devil's Island cries, lost souls decay. Ghostly wails, their voices fade away. Torment breathes in shadow.